1420, Talus River Valley, Northern Silk Road, Chapter 4, Mongol Attack. Trumpeting horns, the drivers of the wagons were frantically urging their horses and camels into a large defensive circular perimeter around the central hub of the caravan, even as the Khan's riders sped toward them from the surrounding hills. As the first rain of black arrows fell from the onrushing host, 12 horse-drawn war wagons, with their teams of archers, pikemen, and contingent of cavalry, were rapidly rolling out from the front, center, and rear of the long line of the caravan. Zahn knew that the Wugang Qi shield walls, a successful strategy he had used to defend the supply trains against the Mongols in the wars of the north, were possibly the only hope to protect them from the Khan's huge frenzied horde. The soldiers quickly erected the cleverly engineered bronze-clad walls and lowered long bamboo forward-facing spikes as the armored platforms were hastily drawn outward into an evenly distributed defense barrier 200 yards from the main bulk of the still forming inner ring of wagons. Thick, heavy red-fletched arrows, launched from powerful Mongol bows, hammered into the silk-wrapped metal shield walls, filling the air with the ringing sound of bronze gongs. Flexing steel-sprung thews, Zahn's elite archers slowly drew back their heavy-strung, massive, black-lacquered Ming composite bows, sighting the onrushing warmongers through slots behind the safety of the outer shield walls. Another blast of horns in the rear was accompanied by the thrumming twang as the archers released their volley of fast-flying shafts. The first wave of black-clad Mongols screamed, faltered, and pitched forward in death as the flesh and leather-piercing black lightning arrows of Zahn's archers found their target. Nimbly charging past the fallen, the skilled enemy riders of the steppe continued forward in a rush of curses and blood-curdling howls. The shrieking Mongol riders surged forward, breaking like a wave around and past the arrow-riddled shield wall wagons of the outer perimeter. Huddled within their now formed central corral of wagons, every musketeer and archer's weapon was sighted on the rapidly approaching storm of death. Silence fell across the rank of Zahn's soldiers, each wrestling with the fear and adrenaline in anticipation to fire. Zahn waited, sitting like a statue upon his horse, just beyond the inner perimeter of wagons, dragon and blazoned shoulder plates and burnished mail shimmering in the high noon sun. He turned toward his men and roared above the din of the treacherous, screaming mull of Mongol riders. "Rise up, Ming warriors! Today we shall bathe in the blood of our enemy!" Thrusting one serpentine gauntleted fist into the sky, Zahn unleashed a trumpet of horns, and the air was shattered with a deafening blast as a shockwave of molten lead roared out to cut down the onrushing Mongol tide. Even as the first dying Oirat's riders slammed into the ground at full gallop, an unseen regiment of fast-moving Ming-like cavalry rode from the long shadows of each shield wall into the rear of the unsuspecting onrushing Mongols. Red-plumed, helmeted warriors struck into the backside of the faltering horsemen. Long da-dao pikes tipped with serpentine blades flashed out, driving headlong through the stumbling riders, carving great arcs of gushing blood amid the startled cries of confusion. In the staggering wake of death wrought by Zahn's cavalry, a clamor of motion suddenly erupted as handfuls of hidden elite Ming infantry burst from behind the protection of the outer armored islands. The savage fighters' wickedly curved Mingdao blades hacked into the remaining Mongols, shearing the legs off the rearing steeds and thrusting up into wounded men in a blur of shimmering steel and gore. A savage cry arose from among the black-clad Oirat vermin, and the charge broke and wheeled back, retreating toward the ridgeline. A cheer rose up from all around Zahn at the sight of the fleeing riders. But he knew that it was far too early for the cries of victory, and even before the echo died, he was shouting commands to rally his troops to be ready to fire again. His men, focused on the battle to the north, were unaware of another surge of the Khan's horsemen charging in from the southern hills. Zahn saw his soldiers on the outer perimeter of the southernmost rear flank release their volley of arrows. But this inrushing stampede of riders was arrayed in tight charging clusters and carried heavy rhino hide shields, deflecting the stream of Ming arrows. Zahn called out, "Prepare to fire!" His commanding voice snapped his troops into action, but even as they sighted into the horde, 3 of the southern walled war wagons exploded in a splintering gout of fire and smoke. The ground buckled as bits of bone and metal hurled inward in a concussive, thundering blast wave. Disoriented by the new attack, his men struggled to take aim, and before he could rally them again, the air was filled with whistling black balls trailing streams of fire arching from the smoking remains of the now burning southern flank. They impacted the caravan with devastating effect as whole sections of the wagon train were consumed in fiery plumes. Zahn had been unprepared for the volley of grenades and was almost thrown from his saddle by the unexpected charge of tumbling debris flung from the erupting chaos. Fumbling for control of his horse, he tried to assess the situation through the burning, acrid heated air that moments ago had been his celebrating men. Just then, screams arose from the northern flank as the sky was filled with a moving wall of flaming arrows. Upon impact, the dried grasses of the plains whipped into a blazing configuration, surging outward like an angry beast, sending his momentarily victorious men to a fiery death. As hundreds of his soldiers screamed their final breaths, another wave of grenades struck, ripping the world apart before Zahn's smoke-choked cries of hate. His bleeding ears were numb to the exalted shouts of his enemies as they appeared like gray shadow-spun demons from the black, billowing haze of the soot-enshrouded battlefield. Muskets rang out from every side as bewildered, fear-fogged men fired at random into the elusive ghouls, dancing like devils amid the roaring flames. Zahn's horse kicked and reared, eyes rolling to white in its maddening attempt to escape the whirling inferno. Gathering his strength, he sprang from the beast, bucking back in the instant that 3 incandescent missiles drilled deep into his dying stallion. He hit the ground rolling, drawing his long 2-handed Chang Dao in a smooth silver motion. Blinded by the heat, but sensing the vibrations on all sides, he struck out like a spitting cobra, cleaving through a forest of blurred, galloping legs. Bounding with lightning reflexes, he vaulted out of the way from the twisting legless ponies as they hurled themselves and their shrieking riders into the raging flames. From out of the roiling wall of blackness, the wail of a woman's voice pierced Zahn's stunned ears. Instinctively, he sprang toward the sound, leaping through the blistering heat-filled haze over the blackening remains of bodies, beasts, and wood. Nearing the caravan's center, the smoke parted, and Zahn witnessed the intense blaze that engulfed the prince's enormous black carriage. He could make out the smoldering bodies stumbling out of the now open doors into the gathering throng of the encircling Mongol riders.